So I'm going to talk today about some work that we've done at Staffordshire University with my colleagues Alison and Sarah, who are sat here, and Jenny, who unfortunately couldn't come along today. And I'm going to talk about, very ambitiously, 2 projects within 10 minutes where we've used participatory action research methods to try and understand and investigate breastfeeding. So I don't think I really need to do this bit, why breastfeeding research is important. We all know why it's important, but it's particularly important in Stoke-on-Trent because we've got some of the lowest breastfeeding rates in the country, and we need to try and understand why that might be and how we can change that. So that's where much of the research that we've been doing has been focused. This picture at the bottom is from one of our previous studies where we were looking at extended breastfeeding, and we did a photo voice study, but I haven't got time to talk about that one as well. So participatory action research, you might be familiar with this, you might not. Essentially, it's an approach that kind of gives power back to the communities and the people who are living through whatever the issue is that we're interested in experiencing. So we try and encourage active participation by our participants. So historically, I've always done qualitative research, so I've always been interested in lived experiences and talking to people, but those ideas quite often came from me. I sort of controlled how that happened, I asked them the questions. This sort of flips that on its head and says, let's go to the community first, and they kind of come up with the questions to be answered. They're then involved in collecting that data. It's a co-construction of knowledge. They ask more questions, and ultimately, with participatory action research, you're trying to facilitate change. You're trying to empower those communities to come up with the solutions to problems that exist for them. And so it's a cyclical method of exploring research. And it's one of the ways where you've got to be really uncomfortable with not knowing where it's going to go, that it might go all over the place, the outcome that you were hoping for might not be what they want. So it's quite an unsettling way to do research, but it's fun. And I'm going to talk about 2 kind of PAR projects that we've done recently. So the first one was a World Cafe project. So a World Cafe, if you're not familiar with it, is the idea that, like focus groups, but through rotations of discussion, so you have groups of people on different tables and you move people amongst them. Through those conversations, you can start to develop and understand solutions, and it's the people at that event that come up with the solutions to a problem. So it's sort of kind of a participant-led worldview of something and an idea about how we change that thing. The second version that we've done is a photo voice project. Photo voice is like my favourite type of research, where you get people to go out, take images of something, have small summaries of those images, and that kind of documents issues of importance. So they kind of go out and collect the data and bring it back together to analyse it together. So they don't, in my previous photo voice, I got them done this kind of work where they then give me the data and I analyse it. What PAR means is they analyse it with you. It's not you taking responsibility for that. It comes from your participants, so your co-researchers. So we've done 2 of these projects. So the first one, the picture on the left, is our breastfeeding policy project, where we were asking about breastfeeding policy priorities, and we ran the World Cafe. And then the second one is this breastfeeding environments research, where I got people going out taking pictures of environments around Stoke-on-Trent and what features they felt either helped people to breastfeed or were barriers to breastfeeding. So I'll talk about the breastfeeding policy study first. We were lucky enough to get a very small pot of funding internally to do this, and I was able to put on this event. So firstly, we surveyed people. So we put out quite a big survey asking about what the priorities were in terms of policy change and research into breastfeeding. And then we invited the people who completed that survey on campus, or some kind of joined us virtually, to take part in the World Cafe discussions around this. So we had a really good range of stakeholders from this, a range of different people. We had national organisations, we had BFM, we had NCT, we had healthcare professionals and student healthcare professionals, and we had representatives from the council and volunteering areas. So it was a nice mix of participants. So we started with a presentation on the research that we'd done so far. We fed everyone. A lot of what participatory action research is about is giving people food. It makes them happy, they want to share, they want to get involved, it's a nice incentive. And then we started these discussions around what are the things that we need to explore and what are the barriers to why these things aren't being explored or changed. So we sort of put people in tables like this, we set them off with a question, We recorded those discussions. We had table hosts on each table kind of leading the discussion. And then after each question, we moved some people around. You fed back what you'd originally discussed, and then you kind of added to that to make sure that the whole group were kind of coming to a consensus. And this talk is more about the method, but these are the findings, and hopefully it will come out and be published in the next few weeks. I'm waiting for the editor to make the last yes on it, and then you'll be able to read the actual paper on this. But the areas that were priorities were around education, so antenatal education, education in schools and healthcare professionals. The need to improve support, which isn't surprising. Family member influence, so the fact that it's not just the woman on her own, that she lives in a context of a family and they can have important implications for whether breastfeeding happens. And then media influence, which fits very much with Alexandra's talk just a second ago about those discourses around breastfeeding and how, so things like if we showed it on EastEnders, people might do it a bit more, but you don't see it in media. And then that led into our second study, which was another lucky internal little bit of money to do some research. And what we know from those discussions and from research that we've done previously is one of the barriers to breastfeeding is this idea about a fear of breastfeeding in public and how that might be judged. So we recruited 9 BFN co-researchers, so they're BFN peer supporters, which I'm one of, so they were kind of my community. And we got them to go around Stoke taking photographs. What are the good environments, what are the bad environments? And then we brought them back together to look at all of that data together and use lots of nice creative methods like our bras and pants example to kind of discuss that and come up with ideas. So the bras were all the good things, the pants were all the bad things. And we had a mini exhibition of the data. And from that, we came up with some very simple do's and don'ts for environments that are in charge of places where people might breastfeed. Welcome breastfeeding of babies and children, so it's not just babies who breastfeed. Provide a comfortable seat, just a chair, somewhere will do. And display breastfeeding support information or show that you're welcoming breastfeeding in some way. Don't expect parents to breastfeed in a toilet. This is an actual breastfeeding room, toilet, chair, baby changing station in around Stoke-on-Trent. Don't ever ask anyone to stop breastfeeding or to cover up, and don't be judgmental if you see someone breastfeeding. The other picture that really gets me is this one. Breastfeeding's welcome here. By the way, there's knife crime. And so from that list, we also came up with like all the key features through all these creative methods, and we came up with a mock-up of an image, and then we've commissioned a local artist to paint this lovely watercolour for us that depicts a cafe that is breastfeeding friendly, incorporating all of those things that we would like to see. So importantly, a comfy chair, someone welcoming the mum to breastfeed. That's the main things. That's the main things we all need. Ideally, if you've got the space, a separate room for it or some kind of cover for those who do feel uncomfortable, so they have the choice of whether they breastfeed openly or in public. But importantly, not in the toilets. Toilets are over here somewhere. And there's free water, and there's a breastfeeding support information piece of literature on the wall. And our next steps are to put this out there, this and the top tips document, out there to places where they make decisions about what they provide for breastfeeding provision, and say, does this make you think about anything you're doing wrong, like putting up a knife crime poster or putting a chair next to a toilet? What will you change having been given this information? We're hoping this is a hook to get people in. And then just a couple of comments on why use PAR. So these are quotes from our participants in the research. So it impacts not just a bigger impact. We're not kind of trying to create change. It's change for those people who are involved as our co-researchers, those people involved in the project. So from the World Cafe, we had people saying that they're going to incorporate this information. They've made great networks, they've linked in with people, and we know from the BFN local community group that they had more healthcare professionals contacting them, want to be part of groups following this. And then from the Photo Voice, they just enjoyed it, but also they've learned a lot more, they've become more impassioned about making a difference, and so they've really enjoyed being part of the process. There's lots of benefits. And that's it. Any questions? But I'll pass on to someone else and questions at the end.